Cowboys Nation. Monday. It is Monday, Dylan. And as we're getting into Monday, the week is starting off strong because we got some interesting things ahead of this mandatory minicamp to talk about. Obviously, I don't know, GP, God's property, but George Pickens to get after. It's funny enough as we've been going here. Obviously, we had the Echo to start. Then I went fishing with the head, and then it's a lot better today. For those that follow me on X and other spots, I got something about a wasp.
You can't even tell anymore.
It's something new every week.
Go check out Nick's Twitter. He's got a photo on there at your guy Nick's. It looks bad. But then somebody, who was it that recommended you put something weird on there?
Burgers and Blitz said, "Hey, you got some tobacco laying around?" Which I'm like, I don't. I was like, well, I don't have any chewing tobacco. I said, I got some. I have some. Pipe, pipe tobacco. He goes, yeah, that'll work. I'm like, okay. So got a little pipe tobacco, threw it right there where I got stung at. Then cold compressor after that. Instantly kind of got the swelling down a little bit. I mean, it was still bad, but it wasn't swollen shut. I looked like Rocky. Cut me, Mick. Cut me.
You looked rough, man. Your eye was almost done. It was almost shut all the way. It was pretty bad.
I will say, at least it looked worse than it felt. But shout to that wasp. He met his doom, and so did his nest. So
we just got done talking too. I don't know if we're recording or what we're doing, but like 10 minutes later, I see your post like, I got stung by a wasp, and your eye is just gone.
Dude, I didn't even see it anywhere. It was the crazy part. I was just walking on my back porch, and then just bim. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I couldn't believe it.
Probably the unluckiest place to get stung, honestly. Luckily, it wasn't your eyeball, I guess.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was like that close. Like I got the picture. It was pretty close. It was crazy, dude. I haven't been stung by a wasp in like, I don't know, in over 20 years. Pretty insane. But you know what? It's Monday. It looked pretty okay. Hey, I'm pretty much back to normal. And what we like is normal football processes and working in that realm. And we don't want a whole lot of drama. And we ended off last week with episode 2 talking about it's officially Pickens watch. That's where we're at, even though we kind of had y'all go back and check that episode where we talked about certain things within that spectrum. And lo and behold, we wake up on a Monday and Pickens already in the building, starting Frisco, taking the physical, and we'll be there on Tuesday for mandatory minicamp. How about them apples?
Yeah, what an exciting development, because it just means we're back to business. We've had nothing but drama for years here with these contract talks and extensions every year, it seems like, and holdouts, and who knows what's going to happen. And finally, we're entering a camp, seemingly assuming that, I mean, he's in the building, so he's there. It's happening. But we're going to go into a training camp here and then obviously minicamp the next 3 days with no drama, really. Nothing, unless something crazy happens, between now and then. And you never know, I guess. But as far as contract stuff goes, nothing crazy. So what a change from the last 3 or 4 years that it's been. Now, in the coming years, we'll be there again. It's probably next year, I would assume. But for 1 year, we'll get to enjoy it and actually participate and watch some cool football without the drama.
Right. I mean, we can't stay away from it forever. But I just think the things that we found highlighted throughout the process here when it came with Pickens was like, I don't know about you, Dylan. I know me. I don't want to sign some contractual work type of things and then immediately do some things to cost me money. I'm just not in the business of doing that, right? It's not really smart money, right, when it comes to that. And he had till July 15th to sign the tag. So he could have waited to sign the tag and not have to worry about this mandatory camp, right? And he wouldn't have to worry about getting fined, anything else. Sign July 15th, pull up to Oxnard, and everything's fine. However, we just kind of go through the timeline of things, right? The day of the draft, right before we went live, for the draft reactions, right? About an hour beforehand, right? It was breaking news. Pickens has signed his tag. He signed his tag, right? And then the speculation ran rampant. The Cowboys are going to draft a wide receiver in round 1. They're going to move Pickens. And then the cat was kind of out of the bag in that front. And then Todd Archer kind of came in there. And this is like maybe 10 minutes before the draft really kicked off and said, well, they've been notified that he's going to sign the tag. The expectation is he's going to sign the tag. He hasn't actually signed it yet, but it didn't matter by then because, the cat was out of the bag and was everywhere. It was running rampant.
Yeah.
His draft offseason, you know, high, there was high energy, right?
I was
Around what's
99%
going on.
sure he was getting traded at that point. Before Todd Archer came out and clarified everything, I was about 99% sure that old boy was gone. And it was exciting. I was like, oh, that sucks, but it was an exciting development. And then, luckily Todd Archer came in and poured the water on it for us all to just to simmer down a little bit.
Right.
And then
The Jane
nothing
Slater
happened.
gift with
The water.
the bucket of water, right?
Yeah.
And then we get to following, and that goes through. Then we get some money, and Jeremy Fowler with a report that his group, his representation had emailed the Cowboys that they do intend on signing the tag. That kind of lingered a little bit. People were speculating where it was. Then lo and behold, boom, the tag signed. Right. So I think a lot of times, particularly when it comes to Cowboys Nation, right, there's a lot of the Cowboys negotiate through the media, right? And we could take that back to the pre-draft conference and what kind of really kicks off. Steve Jones said, hey, we're not negotiating. It's on the tag. We want to see it for one more year. Then we'll get there. And obviously, Shotty with we love Pickens. Be clear, we love Pickens. We've had the conversations around the way, how those things operated. And people kind of took that as a slight per se. Maybe it was just more of Stephen Jones getting ahead of it and putting it to bed and where it is. We'll see how all that plays
I thought
out.
that was phenomenal of Stephen Jones to come out and say that and put his foot down, right? Because there is so much ambiguity around this stuff all the time. It's like he said she's. You look at the Brandon Aubrey thing, for example, right? And it's like it leaks that he wants $10 million a year, but Brandon Aubrey is like, nah, that never really happened. We didn't ask for that. And who knows what the agent's negotiating, what he's putting out there to then settle out a number. And I mean, who knows? But there's always that ambiguity. And for Stephen Jones to come out and say nope. And that's a negotiating tactic in and of itself. Maybe that's a thing to get Pickens' agent, Mulugeta, to come down. Who knows? But to kind of put his foot down and say, we're not messing around with this right now this season. He's going to play in the tag, and that's that. I think that was a really bold move and a move that I appreciated because that kind of puts that whole thing supposedly, to bed. Now, again, like I said, it could be a negotiating tactic, but, at least somewhat puts it to bed. And then now here we are, Pickens, we've said all along, there was no scenario that we could think of that was plausible as to why Pickens would sign the contractual agreement that says you have to be here at this time and date and then not show up when he didn't have to do that and not face fines. What kind of leverage are you gaining in that? There's no leverage to be had. So, I mean, common sense tells you he should have been here, but it is the Cowboys, and the media loves the Cowboys, and you're stirring up all the drama, and who knows? And Pickens the other day, he goes, "You're going to be at camp." He says, So that just adds more fuel to it, right? It's just so much silliness that goes on. So it's nice that we're here, right? It's the 15th. Tomorrow starts minicamp, and he's going to be there, and we can actually focus on football.
Right, and like I said, there's a lot of times where Cowboys fans are talking about how they'll negotiate through the media, right? They'll leak some things out there that they want out there. And, as I tell people all the time, well, agents do the same thing. Agents leak to their media people, whether it's the Schefters of the world, the Rappaports, so on and so forth. And I just think through the process, what we've seen is neither side's really done that. The only time it's being brought up is been through OTAs and whenever somebody doing their job asks Shadi about it and Shadi answers it, moves on. And my anticipation is he's going to be here, so on and so forth. So it's been refreshing coming off the last couple of years that we went through, whether that's the Micah situation, whether that was the Lamb, not being their situation. There's always something around Dex contract situation. Just to be here with nothing in the media from either side. And everything that his representation has talked about and said has been right on point, right on time. And here we are ready for some good old mandatory mini camp Tuesday.
Yeah, I feel like this has been a very responsible negotiation process. It feels like the adults are doing adult things. It just nobody's leaking anything. There's no personal attacks. You can say what you want about the Dak stuff. It was weird, the timing of the assault allegations and all that during the contract, and that just felt fishy. Not saying the Cowboys were doing anything weird there, but it just was fishy timing, weird timing, all that. But there was none of that going on here, right? No, he said, she said. Everybody was very quiet, and it was all dealt with behind the scenes. And I really appreciated that because it really is a circus oftentimes around here with the negotiations.
Yeah. Yeah, Jerry Jones himself, soap opera 365, where I coined as the star turns.
It's done on purpose, right? It's a thing that's done on purpose here, either as a negotiation tactic or a look at us with the Dallas Cowboys type thing, right? Marketing thing. So It was a refreshing course here over the last few months with Mr. Pickens.
No,
Now,
big
can I
facts.
ask you, Nix? Now that we know he's going to be here, right? What do you think?
Mhm.
So we know kind of wide receiver 1, 2, 3. We've talked about 4 and 5. I mean, what
Sure.
do you think the ceiling is for this wide receiver room? Where would you rank them in the NFL now that we know Pickens is going to be part of this thing from here on out?
Yeah, I think, and boy, we'll do the 1-2 tandem, right? Because I mean, I could talk about Flo, and we saw obviously once Lamb went down, we saw that nice jump from Flo, and I'm excited to see where Flo goes from year 2 to year 3 and what that's going to mean for the room, obviously. But I mean, if you're talking about Lamb and Pickens as a 1-2 versus anybody else as 1-2 tandem, I I don't think you can get him outside of the top three. I don't 4 or 5. I think is out the window, right? I mean, we could talk about Cincinnati with Higgins and Chase. I think you could look at the Rams, talk about them with Puka and Adams, even though Adams is a little bit longer in the tooth now, where it's at. You want to have the conversation about Minnesota with Jefferson, Addison. There's some things there. But yeah, I think, yeah, I wouldn't put them lower than 3. I think there's an argument if you want to stand on business and say that they're the best wide receiver tandem now, particularly, Philly's broken up now, no Brown and Smitty anymore. Now, if you want to make the argument that Lamb and Pickens are the number one tandem in the NFL, I think there's a valid argument to be had there, but no worse than 3 though, for sure.
Yeah, and once you get in the top three in any argument, right, it's all debatable, subjective at that point. I mean, I will stand on business. I do think they're the best tandem in the NFL. And if you want to throw Flo in there too, I'll say they're probably the best three in the NFL. And Flo's got massive upside. We saw he's an older receiver, young as far as experience, old as far as age.
Right.
And he's up and coming, but I think, and I read an article by Marcus Mosher today talking about how you get Flournoy more involved. And you can sub him in and out for Lamb and Pickens, obviously in 11 person. They can run more 12, or have him on the field in 11, run more 12, and sub him in and out with Pickens at that point. And I thought that was interesting to sub Flournoy in for Lamb or Pickens, especially with Lamb. Given Lamb's body of work, the amount of touches he's gotten, he's had some nagging injuries, shoulders, things like that. So if Flo can step up, which I think he did last season, he's going to do so even more this season. I would assume he's got Prescott's trust. They in OTAs they had him
Right.
running slot outside. They trust him to do multiple things, right? And
Hmm.
so I think you will see probably more substitutions in 12 personnel in formations outside of 11, where Flo might be a guy and subbing Lamb or Pickens out. And obviously in 11 personnel, the Cowboys ran the most in 2025, 11 more than anybody else. I mean, they're going to be dominant in 11 personnel. They're not going to be able to be stopped, honestly. Their issues might come from the offensive line,
Yeah.
and that might be their Achilles heel on the outside of that O-line. As far as the receivers go, there's no doubt in my mind that their top three can beat anybody in the NFL.
Yeah, I think the interesting part here with Pickens back in the fold, obviously, is that Shotty talked about it earlier during the OTAs of, you know, understanding that Pickens can do more and mentioned some of the slot stuff that he could get him into and understanding that. But I think what also too, we talk about a flow in the 11 personnel standpoint is we know Lamb in the slot is an absolute demon, right? Lamb in the slot. Not that he can't do it, he does great work outside. But yeah, you put Flo outside, put Lamb in the slot, Pickens, do the combo. You have Pickens and Lamb on the same side. Pick your poison there with Flo on the other outside guy, probably next to Ferguson, whatnot. Yeah, you can get really creative within that spectrum. And now that you're into year 2 of this scheme with Clayton Adams, and Shotty talked about Clayton Adams being more confident as the season went along last year with the wide receivers and the passing game and stuff like that. And Shotty understanding. I mentioned this last year whenever Lamb went down. Obviously, you don't want Lamb to go down. Who wants that? But I think what was really great for Shotty in that moment was he was able to lean on Pickens and gather a better understanding of everything Pickens can do on the field, even when Lamb's not there. So it's like, okay, now I can put you in different situations and whatnot. And that allows Flo to flourish. Now what can I do with those guys and putting different guys in the slot, different combinations and having Flo, with 11 personnel with no Tolbert in the building anymore. Good luck with him down in Miami. Maybe you don't want to do as much with Turpin now in the 11 personnel as much as you have been because of Flo and where it's at. Just to watch that kind of come together now, and Pickens and Lamb being that combo, and Pickens back here ready to go for the 26th season unlocks all that.
Yeah, I would be hesitant to take any of those top three out for a Turpin at this point. Turpin gives you the speed. You'll see him in there. At times in 11, he'll have special plays designed for him. Maybe out of the backfield, maybe off a motion, taking a handoff on an end around or something. He's also got the speed that you don't have with the other guys. So maybe you throw him in the slot, send him deep, keep the safety, tethered or whatever. But I think the predominant top three you're going to see obviously are the top three guys, and very rarely would I personally want to take a flow out of the game from three and put in Turpin. I think this season you'll probably start to see the Cowboys, if I had to guess, wean themselves off of Turpin a bit more, even at wide receiver 4 is my prediction. And you'll see some of those other guys, younger guys that are the Holdens of the world, perhaps maybe take a step up and start playing more in that role. That's my
Yeah,
thought. You don't get the speed with the other guys that you get with Turpin, like I said, but Turpin really is kind of that one trick pony. It's the speed, and that's really what he's got.
yeah, I think, and there's a bit of a history here with the Cowboys. Not so much from the wide receiver, right? We can talk about some of these, quote unquote, running with the Tavon Austins of the world, right? Um, oh, what's my guy's name? Oh,
Lucky Whitehead.
Lucky Whitehead. There's another one. Just gadget, small, speedy. What can you do? And there's been moments like there's definitely been moments for Turpin as a wide receiver. The consistency, as Schottenheimer likes to famously talk
Mm-hmm.
about a lot, right? That's kind of the thing is it'll be one step forward, two steps back, or two steps forward, one step back with him, right? It's just a consistency. Now, is some of that from the play call they're giving him or the routes? Maybe. I'm not going to dive too far into that, but I think he's not much of a vertical guy as a crosser, different things of that ilk. Yeah, it's just the consistency format from him at times and where it's at when it comes to Turpin. But boy, I'll tell you, with Flo coming along here, are there moments where you could use Turpin in arounds, different things you want to do, get him into space with the quick bubble screen, something like that, sure. But as far as that 11 personnel, I'm with you there. I think what we saw from Flo last year, Pickett's back in the building, what Lamb can do in the slot. And look, Flo's getting that work in the slot, not do be in the slot all the time. They talked about Pickett's moving around, right? Being multiple, right? Shotty wants to be multiple. And with those three guys and what they bring to the table, I think you have a great opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it's great that all three of those guys can play anywhere, on the field. And Pickens probably less so as far as the slot work goes, but he'll get slot work. He got some slot work
Mm,
last year. But being able to move flow outside, CD inside, whatever it is, and then to touch on Turpin real quick, you talked about the consistency, and nothing
mm.
demonstrated that better than the Eagles game, the second Eagles
Oh
game
my
last year
God.
when he
Yeah.
he tripped, right, caused his own fumble. The
Yeah.
very next play from scrimmage, and I was going through and posting some clips, right? He
Yeah.
takes a deep, if it was a post or what it was across the middle, goes, I don't even know, 50 yards or so, 60 yards, and makes a huge play in the game in a huge moment. And it's like
Mm,
that's the thing. It's like hot or cold with him. He's had drops. He's had amazing catches. They're down conversions. It's like
mm.
once you get to wide receiver 4, you're gonna have flaws with the receiver, and so do the benefits of his speed and what he's able to do from a dynamic perspective outweigh those flaws in his game? And so far, mostly they have. But if you can get somebody more consistent with a higher floor, that can do some good things at wide receiver 4, play special teams, etc. At some point, probably not this year, but maybe next year and beyond, maybe you consider doing something with his roster spot, because he really does only offer a small fraction, but what he does is really, really, really good when he's doing it the right way, right? When he's consistently doing it.
Which makes me just think about old Tyler Johnson over there. And I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm just something I'm keeping an eye on. I'm like, I know, oh, he's a slotty guy, can do some return stuff for you. Just, something I'm keeping an eye on. Not saying, I mean,
yeah.
Shotty hasn't said anything about it being a competition, but I'm like, you do a lot of the same similar things that Turpin does. Intriguing.
When you get to a certain roster spot, right, your top three wide receivers are locked in. You know what they are. But once you get to wide receiver 4 and beyond, it's like it's always a
Mhm.
competition. It
Yeah.
honestly is. And there's reasons why they go with some guys over others. But I would say Turpin really is in a competition, not for this year, but for his future with the Cowboys starting next year at this point in time.
I completely agree, which is exciting as we're going into the last little bit of football we're going to give for a while, Dilly. The last little crumb, like a couple of crumbs here before we're off to the long hot summer in the end of July when we get down to Oxnard. We got the mandatory mini camp Tuesday through Thursday. Uh, Super excited, everybody. Pickens, as we just mentioned, we've talked about here for the first seg in the building. It's all about footy football right now. We even got a little appetizer, I guess I'll call it, right? As they mic'd up Christian Parker for an OTA workout, and just hearing him work with the guys and how he's going about his business, which is also great to hear and see. He was very aware and let people know, hey, mic'd up. So he was tempered. He was kind of tempered down a little bit
Oh
at
yeah.
times through that. The couple things that stuck out to me within that spectrum as we're getting to these mandatory weeks, our mandatory minicamp, not weeks. The as he's on the mic or the walkie-talkie communicating to the linebacker, over communicate. Just really banging that in there was really great. Some of the one-on-one work talking about, hey, the thumb down, not up, and what that means from the jersey and where you're going to get caught up, perhaps. Telling Caleb Downs, you don't have to have 34-inch arms to use your length as a weapon, and going through those things. I'm not sure who had messed up, but someone had messed up, and he's like, well, hey, we'll clean that up later, and kind of pointed and moved on because he wasn't gonna go too far into it. So I thought it was really cool. A really pretty cool segment to get here in the OTAs.
Yeah, and shout out to Devin Moore too. He made a nice play on the ball
Oh yeah.
during that session as well. So that was cool to see. But the one thing I really loved about it was over communicate is what Christian Parker said. He said it out loud, over communicate. And that was obviously an issue with this team last year. There was a massive lack of communication, a massive lack of understanding. And from everything you saw, and just that short clip, which was amazing, they surprised us with that drop. The sounds of the sideline is my favorite thing the Cowboys do. Shout out to their media team that puts that together and does that. But to see him in command of the players, he looks like a guy. He sounds like a guy who commands respect and the players listen to. And for him to simply say, guys, you got to over communicate when you're out there. I absolutely love that because you can't over communicate on the football field. You really can't. More communication, the better. And let's make sure we hit week one without, there's going to be some mistakes made, but let's not have massive laps, massive gaps where it results in big plays, right? And I think you'll see that limited this year with Christian Parker. And when they do make mistakes, I doubt you see that same mistake made multiple times.
Agreed. I mean, it kind of goes into, Caleb Downs, and he makes a mistake. He doesn't make it twice, has been the verbiage coming from Mr. Schottenheimer and crew. So as we're getting into this, and they're about to get after it for 3 days, and we'll see, right? I mean, we've been seeing a lot of people cancel day 3 of the mandatory camps. Hopefully the Cowboys don't, with the new defense and all the new guys on deck. It does get us into, what are you really looking for portion? Like for you, Dylan, is there a particular group of players? Are you just kind of 30,000 foot viewing? I'm just going to take it all in, or are you honing in anywhere here at the mandatory minicamp on a particular position?
Let's take 2 groups each, and we'll go back and forth. So we want to steal each other's ideas because I got 2, so I'm sure you probably got 2 as well.
Okay,
I'm going to start with the tight ends, and the tight ends are interesting to me because you got Brevin Spanfor. I believe this is the last year of his deal. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct.
So huge year for him. Okay, and he's a better blocker than Ferguson. Obviously, a massive human being. He's a really big guy. He probably doesn't run routes or maybe catch as good as Ferguson. We just haven't seen it, so I'm not sure if he does or not. We haven't seen a lot from him, but he is definitely a guy at the tight end position that can offer you something different than what Jake Ferguson does. And that doesn't mean you got to move on from Jake Ferguson, but do we see more playing time from Brevin Spanford this year? Do we see him in lieu of Ferguson in certain spots? Do we use him as a red zone target, being a massive guy? You saw him catch a touchdown pass last year in the red zone. Do we see more of that this season? I'd really like to know what the plan is with Brevin Spanford for 2026 and possibly beyond, depending on what he does this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's Schoonmaker's final year of his contract as well, too. And obviously, they brought in a couple of tight ends via undrafted free agency, Trig.
Right.
Right.
We haven't heard anything about
DJ.
Trig, right?
Yeah,
Have I missed anything about Trig? I haven't heard anything about him.
No. So Trig and DJ from TCU, and they paid him of the upper echelon, which is like the 200K plus realm. That's what Spanford got whenever he came on as an undrafted guy and made the team. So yeah, I mean, from a mandatory camp, let's see if we see something about Trig. Let's see, how the tight ends look a little bit and who's running with the 2s versus the 3s, and if they do little 12 personnel lineups. And I don't know how much they'll get into that, as much as 707 or 9. We'll see what they do within those spectrums. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. In these moments, let's see. We get a little. There's been a whole lot of talk about Trig. Let's see what he does. Let's see where. Whenever we hear, they're going to play with it. But, when we hear who's playing in first team, second team, is it more Spanford in second team than Schoon, or how is it even? How does those things look? Yeah, I can buy that. As a former tight end, sign me up.
Yeah, I'd have to think. I mean, just in my mind, I'm just about done with Schoon, and he might even be a cut candidate this year. I mean, he probably won't be if I had to guess, but I would say that he would be a candidate to watch for potential cuts. I don't think he'll get cut, but
probably depends on Trig, right? Probably depends on Trig in the camp that he has. right? To be honest, so we'll kind of see. For me, my position, I'll lead off with. I'm here for the linebackers. I'm here for is Demore and Overshown the Mike that maybe was the favorite that Shotty mentioned at a press conference, but didn't want to give no names, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know he's already done the two work. He's on record talking about he wanted to have that weight. He envisioned himself with the C on the chest. That's what he wants to be along with obviously we have D Winters in the building. Look, Shamar Jameson going into year two. What does that bring it to the table inside linebacker wise? And of course, Jayshon Barham, right? I mean, my goodness, and the wrecking ball, as you so eloquently call him, Dylan, and what he's going to bring. So to me, just seeing the combinations here, like I said, we're not at a training camp yet, but for the mandatory camp, who's running with the ones and twos, and hey, what is the green dot looking like a little bit? Are we about to see the overshown plan really kind of take a step forward within that spectrum? So for me, definitely the inside linebacker group and how they let them get out there and get after a little bit. And is it Overshown and Winters really running with the ones? Oh, well, okay. Is it Barham and just those kind of things right there. Just seeing how the linebacker core is coming together here so far through OTAs.
Yeah, it's a good position group to watch for sure. A lot of question marks there. They've done a good job. Went from underwhelming at free agency time, where like, well, why didn't they just pay a little extra for Nakobe Dean, or why didn't they go after this guy or that guy? And they took that where there was a huge hole come draft
Mm-hmm.
day, and they made the trade for D Winters. They
Mm-hmm.
addressed it with drafting Barham. They obviously have Shamar James in a backup role, presumably. Overshown now supposedly completely healthy. We'll see how he does. Once the pad comes on here, come July. But it's a room that I think has a lot of question marks, but I think we feel really good about moving forward, depending on
Sure.
their plan with specific guys like Barham.
And look, you got the undrafted kid Barron from Syracuse last year, still in the building. They
Right.
did go sign another linebacker from the Niners and Robinson as well, who's an inside and did some green dot work over there. So there's some other guys down the line that we don't talk about a lot that'll be in that group putting in work. But man, just where I feel comfortable, and I'll speak from this standpoint is and I went through all the range of emotions of how they address linebacker. Okay, we got to free agency. Like the worst kept secret was the Kobe Dean, right? We knew. And look, maybe they did. The word is they offered, if not as much, maybe a little bit more than the Raiders. Dean decided to go play with his former college teammates. All right, it is what it is. And then they pivoted very strongly, right? Because you had so many of the Zoom calls into um Devin Lloyd, who was coming off of an all pro season. And, it's been an up and down career with Jacksonville. He had the year that he had in the contract year, and now he's available. And they went deep into the night till about 7:30 ish with that. And the report was they wasn't comfortable with this processing. And we know that's one of the big things when it comes to Parker and what he wants with his defense to over communicate processing. Let's get there. They just wasn't comfortable enough with it. We're like, okay. And then it was silence and we're looking at each other like, but this linebacker though, like, hey,
You got like one guy there. What are we
oh
doing
yeah, I mean,
here?
what do we? Hey, I mean, linebacker, and then oh well, hey, they did make a well, they flirted with Patrick Queen. Hold on, in that same moment, they did flirt with the trade for Patrick Queen as well, right? That also happened there in the first 48 hours of quote unquote free agency. Uh, Legal tampering period, as they say. And then we heard later down the line, oh, well, they did have a conversation with Miami and they maybe called Houston. I'm like, okay, but you haven't done anything. We're just kind of going through the emotions of what are we doing at linebacker to the point of we get to day two of the draft. And there you go. They do make the trade for D Winners. But what we understood was they circled back to Miami. Hey, you sure? They circled back to Houston for Alshire. Are you sure? And then they landed on Winners, right? Sorensen in the building, the special teams coordinator who has some knowledge of playing of coaching him, right? When he was a defensive coordinator over there. And they tagged that together, right? So, all right, day two, no, no, no. All right, give us Winners. It was so interesting when the trade happened, right? Because we watched in the draft. Well, there goes everyone. Like
Hmm.
you thought you were going to get Trotter from Mizzou. No, he's up out of there. Oh, Jacob Rodriguez. Okay, he's gone. Right? They just started flying off the board. Did you get to the third round pick after the Cowboys couldn't go get a Brooks down from Miami or a Jair down in Houston? We'll take Winners. We'll jet bar him and boom. And in that moment, and this is part of the trust factor, understanding and trying to gather the knowledge of how they're going to do things with this defense and how Parker wants to move from not getting Dean right there up to the 10th hour, 12th hour, whatever you want to call it, on Devin Lloyd, to making calls, circle back to those same calls, to here's the plan. They just seem to have a very good idea of how they want to address things in real time. And that's just very I look, and that's no disrespect to Dan Quinn and what he was able to do here. I don't know if I ever felt that way about Dan Quinn either within those moments. It's just going to be super trait guys and everything. But that part was very refreshing for me after it all played out. And I almost pulled my hair out to be bald like you. And like, what is going on to get to this point here? I'm like, okay, I see the vision of what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and it's a testament to them, not just bringing guys in just to bring guys in, right? We're sitting there, like you said, the linebackers are going in free agency. We're not getting any of them. And it's like they're just being super, super picky on what they want. And you know what? That's not a bad thing. At the time, we're questioning it like, well, you can't be too picky, otherwise you got zero bodies in the room. So what are we going to do now? But then they go make the trade for D Winners. That's a very adequate solution, right? I think for whether he's a starter or a key backup, which it sounds like he'll probably be a starter next to Overshown. But I mean, great acquisition there. And they did that when the linebackers started flying off the board in the draft. They said, all right, let's not play around. We'll go ahead and make the call, make the trade. And they got it done. They also addressed it with Barham. So a testament to kind of their willpower to not be like, well, let's panic buy somebody in free agency. They stuck to their guns and ended up, I think, in a pretty good spot with the linebackers. My next position, I guess I'll jump into mine. Cornerbacks, or we'll say defensive backs, right? We'll say all the defensive backs. I think the safeties
All of
too.
them?
Sorry.
Okay.
I'll take
You will
both
do
groups.
all? Okay.
I'll take the
All right,
D-backs,
okay,
right?
well, there you go. All right, well, you take them both. That's fine.
So you got Bland, obviously, coming back from an injury, an oft-injured player. We'll see how he's doing, and this is one of the things you can tell from the OTAs and minicamp is kind of the health of players, how well they're moving.
Is he really going to compete here in the minicamp?
I don't think so.
Right?
I'm just speaking generally about the room,
Yeah.
right? And I guess probably closer to training camp for Bland. We'll see what he's up to, if he even participates as much in camp or not. But guys like him, obviously Revel in year 2, no knee brace, was moving around really well at OTAs. Should get a ton of work here at minicamp. Jalen Thompson, hopefully we get our first look at him, and he's off the court with his pec injury. I'm not sure. If not, that's fine too. If you want to save him for training camp, that's fine. But the PJ Locks of the world, right? And how dare I not mention Caleb Downs first? I mean, we're all excited about this guy.
We did draft him.
We did 11. Shout out to that video. That's the best video I think I've ever put up traction wise on YouTube. The fan reaction, that was a good one. But just to see him, and we'll get more insight because the media is allowed to be present at more of the minicamp than they were at OTAs, to present more information at minicamp than at OTAs. So we'll get probably a bunch of videos of these guys doing some really cool things. So let's just see, and the Kobe Durant's as well of the world that I didn't even mention Kobe Durant. He's going to be a key player, whether a starter or not. He's going to get a ton of playing time on this defense. So. And there's a bevy of other guys that I didn't mention as well, but just the defensive backs as a whole, after a season like last year where they were just god awful, right? And some of that's to do with the players, some of it is the coaching and the scheme and all that. But I'm very excited to see how these corners and safeties turning around after such an atrocious season in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, Kalen Carson, for all intents and purposes, hearing good things about him through OTAs thus far, possibly maybe your best cornerback you had on the field last year for what it's worth. Obviously, health is wealth for him, not getting, often injured. What does that look like? Butler coming back from the injury as well, a cornerback. What does he look like, over here at this mandatory camp and what's going on there? The Ricky Moore, which you just mentioned a little earlier, during the mic'd up session, having a good play. Yeah. And then, of course, you got to go safeties, right? Where's Caleb Downs playing? Slot. Then if he's on the slot, then he's safety, and those guys are going to rotate a lot within that slot area where it's at. But that's a good thing to look at as well. When it's not Downs and he is going back to safety, who is the cornerback that they're putting in the slot over this mandatory camp? Because we really haven't got through OTAs, a whole lot. There's been a bevy of guys kind of doing that. Let's see if we get a little bit more of a clearer picture here of what they're thinking during this mini camp.
Yeah, and I'd have to, if I took a guess, I'd probably have to say Durant probably has, if they're planning on playing Bland and Revel on the outside, then I would think Durant, who can play inside and outside, probably more of an outside corner, really, but he can play inside as well. And so if you're not going to have Downs there in the slot, you're going to have him back, playing the 2 high safety or whatever that might be, maybe in a Rob role. Who knows what their plans are? But I could see Durant getting some snaps at in the slot. But like you said, there's other guys too. There's the Josh Butlers and the Devin Moores and all these guys, right? Reddy was a guy who actually played pretty well last year. You said
Sure.
Carson might have been your best corner. Reddy Stewart might have been up there too. And not that necessarily is a great thing because those aren't really guys who should be your best players. Not to say they're bad or anything. But they had okay seasons for what it was. So you're absolutely right with that, Reddy Stewart. And I'm just excited to see who emerges there after, really, in my eyes, who are the top two, Bland and Revel. Who's kind of the third guy in their eyes that's going to emerge?
Yeah, I mean, one's out of the gate, Revel and Durant, maybe
Yeah,
out the gate. I mean, we'll
probably.
see rotation, but maybe
What?
those are the guys.
Yeah, yeah, and come camp time or actual season time, right? It'll be probably Bland and Revel, I would assume. So I guess Durant would probably be your three at that point, unless
Right.
Durant wins over one of those two guys. I would have to think it would be Revel if he's going to beat somebody because Bland has the money, the contract. I would assume he would get the benefit of the doubt, get the playing time, if I had to guess. But all these stories, it'll all take shape over the course of starting tomorrow all the way through the end of August.
All right. Well, I'll give you my second position group, and there's going to be a lot of 7-on-7. I'm going to go with the quarterbacks. Going with the quarterbacks. I'm going with we have competition for the number 2 with Joe Milton and Sam Howell. Right. And I mean, Dak's going to get some work in there. Obviously, we're always excited to see Dak get after it. But we've heard Lamb talk about the frustrating things with this defense at times and where it's at and them getting the work against it. But yeah, these quarterbacks, man. I mean, Shotty's got it out there. He said it, at the presser. Yeah, we're in a battle for number 2. Sam's got every opportunity to go after it. I think this is more of a battle than when we have the conversation about the left tackle. I think this is a true battle. And not to say that Nate doesn't get opportunity at left tackle. I'm not saying that he doesn't. I'm just, I feel like this is really something that they're looking at. They upgraded the position and, what better? I mean, all these reps are going to count now. And we kind of understand what the work's going to be at the mandatory camp. They got to throw this rock, though, and we're going to start keeping that count. They're going to start looking at those things. So, yeah, the Joe Milton, Sam Howell experience begins here a little bit more heavily at the mandatory camp, and excited to see what that looks like throughout training camp in general.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. The left tackle thing's probably not really a true battle between Tyler Guyton and Nate out there. This is obviously a real bad. I don't think this team has a plan to go with either guy at QB2. I think it really is whoever shows up and shows out, and that starts tomorrow. You better start slinging that thing right away because it's only going to get more difficult when you're on full 11 on 11 in camp. You're playing against the Rams or the Saints, whatever it might be. It's only going to get more difficult from there. So you better start out hot and start on the right foot at that quarterback position and hit your guys, right? Hit not just put the ball in their vicinity, but let's see if they can lead guys. Let's see if they can put some touch on the balls, which Joe Milton has struggled with mightily is the touch passes. Let's see if he's developed in that regard. And yeah, it'll be interesting, man. And something that is important too that people oftentimes forget with these quarterback battles, it's a big chance for the receivers to show out too. And sometimes it can be a little bit unfair for these down roster receivers, right? When they're getting horrible balls from the quarterback. So hopefully these quarterbacks can show out because that only helps the rest of your team showcase what they can do and develop these other guys as well. So yeah, that's a good pick and one I'll be keeping my eyes on as well.
Yeah. But hey, we get Nathan Thomas, go out there and compete. I'm not saying that you don't. I just we'll see. Well, we're not going to find anything out about this camp with the offensive line and stuff and what they're doing.
Sure. Yeah.
Once we get to camp, we'll down there in Oxnard, we'll see for sure. But yeah, quarterbacks though. But the number one thing here for this 3-day mandatory camp, the number one thing, health is wealth, brother. And let's make sure we get through these last 3 days completely healthy, ready to pack it up and take this show on the road come into July out there to Oxnard for training camp.
Yeah, and I just want to say, happy George Pickens Day, man, because Pickens Watch is over. Hooray!
It's over. We survived. We survived it with. Yeah. It's a great Monday. We survived it well, and now, of course, it'll be interesting. Well, we'll have so much to talk about this week, which will be fun for sure, because the questions are going to fly. They'll be available for media. So what we know now, we might not know later. But yeah, very, very intriguing moments. That presser tomorrow morning might be pretty good from O'Shotty. Yeah. So I'm super excited for these next 3 days because to hug it tight. Let's hug it tight for a month and a half and just wait.
We'll be up. We'll be posting videos. We'll have guests on the show here
Absolutely.
in the coming weeks, and we'll keep you all busy. So don't worry too much.
Yeah, break down some positions, get a little bit deeper down the lines, and talk about the butlers and different guys of that ilk. Yeah, I'm super stoked for it, man.
Absolutely.
Well, as always, make sure you sub, like, free 99, all those good things within that spectrum. Make sure you follow us over there on X as well. The DC, oh, is it the DC Coalition? I think is what the tag is
Yeah,
to find it.
I had to
Yes.
shorten it. They
Yeah, we
wouldn't
had
let
to
me do the whole
shorten
thing.
it. Yeah, so you got to shorten it that way as we will have some spaces here and there within the spectrum as well too, as we continuously grow in this thing, whatnot. So, yeah, man, mandatory camp. Let's have some fun and get through it healthy.
Let's do it. Peace.
Peace.
Cowboys.